Welcome back. Let's now get you the mood of the Indian American voter in this US election. We're discussing the Indian American Attitude Survey by the Carnegie Endowment Center, and we're joined by Milan Vaishnav, the Senior Fellow and Director of the South Asia Program at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thank you very much, Milan, for joining us. Let me begin by asking you about the Indian Americans. How committed are they still to the Democratic Party? The survey says that attachment has declined. By how much and why?
Thanks so much for having me. I should just say from the outset that the survey that we have just completed is a nationally representative survey of Indian American citizens, those Indian residents residing in the United States who are eligible to vote. And this is a follow-up to something we did 4 years ago, which allows us to look at a trend over time. What we find is, as opposed to 2020, when close to 60% of Indian Americans identified with the Democratic Party, that has come down almost to 50% now. So almost by 10 percentage points in terms of their party identification. And that's, I think, a pretty significant shift. And so we're seeing more people declare themselves as independents or as associating with the Republican Party.
Right. In terms of the numbers and the people you surveyed, does the presence of Kamala Harris on the ballot excite Indian American voters? Does it attract more undecided Indian Americans in favor of the Democrats?
Well, it's an interesting question, because when we ask that question, we find that almost 1 in 2 Indian Americans say yes, Harris's presence at the top of the Democratic ticket does make them more enthusiastic about voting for the Democrats on Election Day. But if you look at the overall picture, there has been, again, in line with the numbers I just mentioned on party identification, about an 8 or 9 percentage point shift from Biden in 2020 to Harris today. So those Democratic numbers have come down, and the numbers for Trump have correspondingly gone up, right? So Indian Americans still overwhelmingly favor the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris. But that margin has come down from, say, about 70-20 to 60-30.
That is indeed very significant. Now, when we speak about gender gap in voting preferences among Indian Americans, what did your survey really point out?
This, I think, is one of the most interesting findings, right? We have never seen evidence of a gender gap in the Indian American population. That if you look at surveys that have been done of this community, like ours, if you look at broader surveys of Asian Americans that go back, now 15, 16 years, men and women more or less broadly agree when it comes to their voting habits. This is the first time that we've picked up a pretty significant gender gap. Women are much more supportive of Kamala Harris than men are. I should say that a majority of men still plan to vote for her, but 67% of Indian American women plan to pull the lever on Election Day for Kamala Harris, as opposed to just 53% of men. When you look into that statistic, that divergence more closely, what you find is that this movement from men away from the Democrats towards Republicans is almost entirely driven by younger men who are below the age of 40, specifically US-born young men under the age of 40. And that is something that we're actually seeing across ethnic and racial groups. If you look at Black community voting, if you look at surveys of Hispanics, you're also seeing that younger men are showing more positively for Donald Trump.
So younger Indian Americans, those born in the United States, are showing a preference for Donald Trump, according to your survey. I would also like to ask you about key issues for Indian American voters. Abortion, you said, is one of the issues which really tops the list.
Yeah, I mean, I think unsurprisingly, the number one issue is inflation, right? I mean, this is a global phenomenon. It's true in India. It's been true in Europe. It's true in the United States. Voters don't like when they go to the grocery store or when they fill up their cars with gasoline to see high prices. And that's something that has become a kind of systemic reality across societies, right? And the US has certainly been no stranger to that. But right below that, in fact, tied for number two with just the general state of the economy, is the question of abortion and reproductive rights. And in fact, that is something that particularly energizes women and Democratic voters. Now, again, if I were to tell you this broadly about the American population, it probably wouldn't surprise you. But it is striking to me that this has become a salient top-tier issue for Indian Americans, because that's a new phenomenon. That is nothing that has something that hasn't showed up on previous surveys.
In terms of immigration, we've seen some very strong rhetoric in this election, especially from Donald Trump, when he refers to immigrants as people who will enter your country illegally, they will eat your cats and dogs, things like that. Does that really turn off the Indian American population? Is this something that's hurting the sentiments?
Well, I would say, look, by and large, there are structural factors that I think put a ceiling on the extent to which Indian Americans are going to shift rightwards to the Republican Party. When you ask Indian Americans who don't associate with the Republican Party, why is it that you don't identify as a Republican? Very much at the top of the list is this belief that, look, fundamentally, this avatar of the Republican Party is anti-minority, right? And that extends not just to illegal, undocumented immigrants, but as well as, they are opponents of legal migration. Now, I will say that if you look at it the other way, that is, who are those Indian Americans who are choosing to vote for Donald Trump? The number one issue that they come back with is that they are upset with the Democratic Party's stance on illegal immigration. They find them to be too soft, too weak, right? Which again is something that we're seeing in other communities, whether it's the Black community, the Hispanic community, and the Asian American community at large, that they're supporters of immigration, but they're quite upset by what they see as people who wish to circumvent the rules.
Right. Very important and very interesting findings, especially about the decline in the number of Indian Americans who have an attachment with the Democrats, and how some of the numbers there have shifted to the Republicans, though a small number, but yet very, very significant. Thank you very much, Milan, Vaishnav, for joining us with the findings of that very important Indian American attitude survey, how the Indian American is actually thinking in this election. You can find more of that on our website, CNBC-TV18.com as well. On that note, we come to the end of this special broadcast, but through the week, we will be getting you more newsmakers and special insights into the US election and what this means for India-US ties going forward as well. So keep tuning in. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.